Good morning, everybody. Mike Erickson from the Roseville Area Optimist Club Civics Education Committee. We're coming to you live from the White Bear Lake Boatworks Commons public space here, right on beautiful White Bear Lake and beautiful downtown White Bear Lake. With us today is a very special guest, State Representative Dean Urdahl. Dean Urdahl is here with us as we talk about civics education. Dean, welcome here to White Bear Lake.
Thank you, Mike. Good to be here.
So, Dean, why don't you let us know a little bit more about yourself, your current position and previous jobs, and why it's so important that you're coming to us today for the Civics Education Committee and the perspectives that you can share.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm a native of Litchfield, Minnesota. That's where I was born and raised. Went to high school. I went to college at St. Cloud State. Became a social studies teacher at Newland and Spicer. Taught there for 35 years, also teaching civics education there. And then in 2002, I was elected to the Minnesota State House of Representatives, and I've been serving there ever since. I've served on a capital investment committee, that's the bonding committee. I was the chair of that committee for a couple of years. Now I'm also on that committee as I continue, but also on the Legacy Committee and also on education policy. And certainly as a former teacher, my interest in education is evident, I think, through the work that I do with the Education Policy Committee. And that's where I have been involved with my civics education reform.
That's outstanding. We sure appreciate that you're here and offering a perspective. So tell us, how did you get involved in running for this thing called the legislature?
Well, I had a long time interest going back to when I was a junior in high school. I think I remember for the first time saying, I kind of like to be a state representative someday. I was on the first date with a girl, and that was also the last date with that girl.
That's good.
But I then through my my teaching career, I was involved in local party politics and that type of thing. There was no real opening for me to run in my home area because my legislator was there for a long time. And then eventually things opened up. The time became right for me, right to be elected anyway. And after a lot of effort over the years and staying involved in doing things, I again was elected in 2002. My district presently is Meeker County, Litchfield, half the city of Hutchinson, one township in Wright County, and that's Cokato.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. How did you decide that you were going to transition from being a social studies teacher to a state representative?
Well, I was about reaching the time where where I could retire from teaching. Actually, for 4 years, I was both a teacher and a state representative. It overlapped and it worked out. But basically, I'd been in education for a long time. It was time to flip the page and move on to something else, and this is something that I'd always been interested in moving on to.
Well, perfect transition. So tell us, what's it like to be a state representative, and what's a normal day, if there's such a thing, and help our viewers understand what you do on a day-to-day basis, more importantly when the legislature's in session?
Well, first of all, it's supposed to be a part-time job. Mm-hmm. It's become more than that. Certainly, it's what you make of it. My days almost, now this is the interim, the time between the sessions. Yep. My days are filled most every day with legislative work of some type. So you can keep busy. In the legislative session, we have committee meetings. We have, before the pandemic, a lot of meetings in our offices as well. And then the floor sessions, those are the three things that take up time. And now it's Zoom meetings in my office. But meeting with people, meeting with lobbyists as they come through, going to committee meetings, going to the floor, during session, that takes up time. And it makes for some pretty full days. there's then work to do in your office after you've done the other. There's a lot of email to catch up on, and you work on those. And so it's a pretty time-consuming occupation.
Oh, no doubt. And I think from the past year and a half, tell our viewers how difficult that must have been for you to do your work. Zoom meetings, certainly emails, that had to be tough.
Well, it's certainly hard adapting to it.
Yep.
You're used to doing things a certain way, and now you're doing things a different way. It worked out. We made it work. The Zoom meetings do accomplish most of the things that you want to do, but it's not, I don't believe as effective. I mean, face-to-face meetings I think are much better. And building relationships, and one of the most important things about being in public office is building relationships. That's how you move legislation forward, how you get things done. And in my case, it's obviously difficult when you're just telecommunicating. There are legislators that I've not even met yet.
Wow.
And that's unusual. I mean, met face to face.
Yep.
And so it's difficult in that way, and there are those who talk about the conveniences of Zoom meetings. Well, it was nice that, okay, I stay in a hotel in St. Paul during session, and I get up in the morning and turn on my computer, and my 8 o'clock committee meeting's right there, and away I go. So there are those conveniences, but overall it's not as effective.
Absolutely, we understand. So Dean, you've been very kind and helpful to our Civics Education Committee. If you could share with our viewers the work that you've done specific to this last legislative session with Civics Education. I think that would be of interest to both our students and our social studies teachers.
Okay, first of all, just give you a little background of the information that led me to do what I'm doing. And I've always felt, obviously, that civics education is important. As a teacher, I taught this. I should add that I also discovered once I got in the legislature that how I was teaching how things worked wasn't always how they really worked when you're there. But the basic elements are you have to pass both houses, be signed by the governor to become a law. But I saw that the National College Board reported that in order to be successful, to have the successful tools to go to college, the two most important things were computer literacy and knowledge of the United States Constitution. And then I saw the National Association of Education Progress report. That's NAEP, which is the nation's report card. And they said that currently the graduation proficiency rate is 23%.
Wow.
In other words, less than 1 in 4 are graduated from high school knowing how the government works. And it's evident by other bits of information I've seen. 77% of those 18 to 34 can even name one of the United States senators. 2/3 can name one of the branches of government, and 1/3 can't name any. 2/3 can name a judge on American Idol, 15% a Supreme Court justice. And so we are basically still, for the most part, teaching civics education in Minnesota, but they're not learning it.
Right.
And that's an important distinction. There are those school board association superintendents will argue to me, yeah, we're teaching it. Well, yes, but they're obviously not learning it. And so that's what I am campaigning to do. In Minnesota, 3.5 credits are assigned to social studies, but not specifically to anything. So there is no credit assigned to social studies, in social studies to civics, meaning it lowers in relevance. And so I am saying that civics must be taught as a course for credit. I don't say how many credits, but make it credit bearing and teach it to juniors or seniors. Where it is taught in Minnesota today, for the most part, it's taught to 9th graders. And 9th graders, I think evidently are not ready to learn it. If you're going to be graduated from high school, you're going to be voting very soon, you're going to be taking part in our society and in public discourse. I think that juniors or seniors, that's where it should be taught. So my bill says that civics shall be taught as a credit-bearing course to juniors or seniors. And it's been a bit of a struggle to get that across the line, but we've been working at it for maybe 5 years now, and we're getting closer.
Are you getting bipartisan support for your bill?
Yes. This last session, my bill managed to get into the Education Omnibus bill, which is chaired by Democrats. And I added my provision off the floor as an amendment to the bill, and I had wide support from both Democrats and Republicans. However, when it got to conference committee, the Senate did not take it. And so that's a situation that we still have to deal with. The Senate Education Committee chair, we need to work with a little more and work through this. And I think we have a good chance this next session to get it done.
Now, is there something that our viewers, certainly the people who watch this video, is there something that they can do to help this effort, Dean?
Well, if you think it's important that our graduates from our high schools in Minnesota know how this government works in order to fully participate in our society, talk to your school board members, talk to your school superintendents. And if they say, well, we're already teaching it, don't let them get by with that. Yeah, they're teaching it, but as I said now a couple times, it's not being learned. We are not graduating students proficient. Now, there's some reasons for this. I mean, we have a big emphasis on STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and that's important. But when you do that, when you add on, when you emphasize one area, another area becomes de-emphasized. For example, the federal government gives $50 a student for STEM courses, a nickel for social studies and civics. And so, again, when you emphasize one, something's going to suffer. In social studies, history, and civics are suffering in Minnesota.
Sure. Wait.
So talk to school board members, talk to superintendents, and we're going to keep the pressure on, and hopefully we'll get this done.
Good, we can do that. Take us back to high school then, Dean, if you could. You're talking about the importance of 11th and 12th graders being educated on civics education. What was your exposure to it, and why is it so important to you beyond that which you've shared with us this morning?
Well, you know, when I was teaching, I mean, I had a social studies curriculum in which I had a time designated for civics education. Also, in my school, when I was teaching it, I taught it as part of my curriculum, but primarily ninth grade is where it's taught in New London Spicer. You know, back in my time, I received my civics education as part of a social studies curriculum, not as a particular class. We had something in ninth grade that wasn't even really civics. But it's been over 50 years that the decline has been happening, and that's what we are trying to reverse. Another thing we have a test that all students in Minnesota must take dealing with civics. Unfortunately, no school has to report it, and kids don't have to pass it. So the test is being given, we don't know the scores, and we don't know if everyone really is taking it. I'm trying to emphasize now, maybe do an aggregate where all the schools, if they're worried about competition between the school districts, all the schools report in, and we have one score for the state of Minnesota. And this is how we're doing it as an aggregate in civics.
So Dean, final comments then to bring some closure to this big picture issue. What can you share with our viewers that you want them to focus in on as far as civics education?
that it's important to know how our system works, how our government works, that it's not being learned in Minnesota. It needs to be taught to juniors and seniors for credit. And our republic depends on the knowledge of its citizenry about how our government works. And if we don't do something about it, we are going to further decline, and it will lead to further disruptions in our society.
Now more than ever. On behalf of the Roseville Area Optimist Club and our Civics Education, I'd like to extend a personal thank you to State Representative Dean Urdahl for making the visit out here. Dean, thank you very much. You all have a great day.
Thank you.